are listening to the Willpower Podcast. Welcome to the show. My name is Will Holdren, and I talk with some of the most influential CEOs, entrepreneurial leaders, and thought leaders to reveal the secrets that has led to their success. I believe that with the right knowledge and mindset, you can do anything you set your mind to. So if you want to learn how to change your life for the better, if you want to learn how millionaires actually became wealthy, or if you want to develop and start your own business from the ground up with the right knowledge to help you, then you are in the right place, because this is the Willpower Podcast. How's it going, everyone? My name is Will Holdren. I am the host of the Willpower Podcast. Today we have an amazing, unique entrepreneur out of the Utah state, and his name is Reid Tileston. And Reid actually trains the future entrepreneurial business owners that are out there. He's an award-winning keynote speaker. He also teaches people how to actually acquire businesses and do that the right way. And he personally has built and sold 4 companies himself. He's also an author of a book called Grit It Done. And on top of that, he has worked with major brands like the Milwaukee Bucks, which is amazing, Microsoft, and other brands such as Harley, Davidson. So it's an absolute honor to have him on here today. So Reid, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I think that I like the choice of your word unique. It's a very fair way to describe me for people that know me best. So thanks for having me. Super happy to be here.
Yeah, my pleasure. One thing I found out from this podcast is that every entrepreneur is the exception to the rule, right? They all do things their own way. They got their unique mindset, unique business. So it's always fun diving into those mindsets and really finding out how they got to where they are today. So the first thing I want to ask you that I pretty much ask all my guests is, one, what makes you want to come on podcasts like these and really just share your story to people that want to listen to it?
I think that I want to engage your audience around how they can live their American dream through small business ownership. I've been lucky and blessed that over the last 16 years of doing this now, I've been able to live mine. So I just want to share my experiences so as many people as possible can analyze going down the route of being an entrepreneurial business owner. The way that I think about it is that there's 4 key avatars out there. One is we have our employees of the world. They're fantastic. We love them. The good ones tend to get promoted. The not so good ones, tend to find the exit. Then you have what I'll call an equity employee. We'll think about that as a CEO, right? Someone that has equity upside, but they don't actually control their destiny. They're an employee, right? At the peril of a board or whatever. Then you have business owners. I've been a business owner. I love business owners. Ultimately, when you're a business owner, the business probably owns you more than you own the business. Then you have what I call entrepreneurial business owners. And that is where you can work on the business as opposed to in the business. And I think that is the key path for individuals going out and experiencing the autonomy and the freedom that can come with business ownership. And quite frankly, let's be clear, if you're talking about acquiring a business that has like $2 million of EBITDA, recurring revenue, fragmented customer base, every private equity firm in the world, along with me, and probably you would want to acquire it. But a big reason that I wrote this book is that I think about the individual who's making the median US wage, $1,118 per week. Let's gross it up to $70K per year, taking the present value of benefits and stuff like that. I think it's a great option to go out and buy a business making $500,000 EBITDA, lever up with the SBA. Hopefully you have the savings, you can fill the equity gap on your own, or if not, you could, come talk to someone like me or others that will invest in the space. You could make more money doing it, even if you don't grow the business at all. And after 10 years, when you pay off your debt, you'll have a low 7-figure exit, which is going to put you in a better financial position than if you kept your job. In addition to that, and while business ownership is hard and failure is real and the cost of it can be bankruptcy with Chapter 11, you're probably going to feel more freedom and autonomy than you did in your corporate job. I would argue the best part is you're going to meet some cool people along the way. The best part for me is always relationships I have with the team members, my entrepreneurial employees, I call them. I think it's impossible not to become more civic minded in the process. So you'll feel free, you'll make more money, have some good relationships, get more civic minded. The upside can be tremendous. So I wrote this book. It's available for 99 cents through the end of May. Then after that, we'll bump up the price probably a little bit. And I think that buying a small business or even acquiring a franchise license is a fantastic way is a fantastic career path that everyone should at least analyze on the high level. And I wrote this book as a time efficient, cost-effective first step to do that.
Yeah.
So that's my story, man. I'm sticking to it.
I love it. I love it. And it's definitely a unique viewpoint, right? Of being able to come into a business already kind of successful, already has a positive EBITDA, something you can step into and kind of grow it from something that's already established. So it's a really unique standpoint. I don't think a lot of people really view business ownership and going down that route in that specific way, but there's a lot of upside to doing it that way, just like you were talking about. And another thing you mentioned is realizing which one of those four types of people you are, right? So you got to realize if you're going to be an entrepreneur, right? Or if you want to be an entrepreneur, kind of grow up within a company, or if you want to just be an employee, right? And so you got to figure that out. And I want to jump back into you. So for your story, when you first started out, how did you realize initially what you were? Like whether it was employee, entrepreneur, how did you know that from a young age or did that come later?
Yeah, so I was 23 years old. I went to UC Berkeley for my undergrad. So and I worked in finance, right? So at 23, I had $100,000 in the bank and I had good earnings potential. So I was in a good situation.
It's pretty good.
I was out at happy hour at San Francisco's second oldest pub, a place called the Old Ship Saloon. It has a mast of a ship that sunk in 1851 during the gold rush. So pretty cool place if anyone's ever in San Francisco. I was out at happy hour with two private equity pros, and I didn't know what I wanted to do next. Life was good at my job, but I was tired of being a spreadsheet jockey, Will. I didn't really like financial modeling or deal sourcing. I wasn't that good at the financial modeling. So I was feeling like I wanted to get more hands-on. I didn't study engineering at UC Berkeley, so I didn't think I was going to go out and be the next founder of Facebook or Google. But these two guys in private equity, one of which was my older brother, were looking at acquiring franchisors. And in doing the diligence on franchisors, they looked at how the actual franchise units performed. And they were like, man, there's this concept, Anytime Fitness, that these franchises could do pretty well. Now, I like fitness. My parents met running a marathon. No joke. It's a cool story about Vaseline and chance encounters we can get to later. And I said, you know what? Let's do this. So I quit my job. The three of us decided to go out and the three of us invested. I quit my job. I was going to go run the first fitness club, which opened in December 2007 in Sacramento, right before the Great Recession. That was
Wow.
only like 20% of the problem. 30% was I didn't know how to run a business, but 50% of it, the majority of it was that we just chose a bad market. So that first club, I got it to make a couple $1,000s a month by dressing up in a purple superhero suit called Captain Running Man and pounding the pavement in the 95-degree Sacramento summer heat, selling 3-month $99 to these special memberships.
Yeah.
And my partners, bless their heart, they still had their jobs. So there was only so much they could do to support me. And at that point, I had my identity of I left finance because I didn't want to be an employee. But at that point, I was an equity employee because I didn't control the business, right? There were three partners. At that point, I said, you know what? I'm the individual wearing the purple superhero suit here. As I go forward, I want to be the owner of the business, right? So I was able, through some great strokes of luck, which I can talk about and are certainly outlined in the book. I went out, opened additional clubs on my own, became a top performing multi-unit Anytime Fitness owner. And that's what got me down the route. Second club I owned, I was what I would call a business owner. I actively worked in the business. Then with the third club, I became an entrepreneurial business owner. That is where the clubs fully ran themselves and I had the opportunities to go out and do other things. So that's how it personally came to me. And I'm just lucky because I had this revelation when I was literally 23, 24, 25 years old.
Yeah.
And I've been able to, be successful with it. And now the best part about it is that I love teaching. Like teaching is super fun for me. I got inspired to do it when I was at business school and I got to be the TA for a class on entrepreneurship through acquisition. Plus I come from an academically minded family. So I'm just having fun engaging with people about how they should consider going down this route as well. Because there's a lot of other people that like play in this space, to be clear. But what's interesting now is that, as you all know, because you're working in wealth management, demographic trends. You have the baby boomers are retiring and their business owners are passing down their businesses to next generation. They're thinking about succession. So there's a lot of supply now. There's also a lot of demand. A lot of people want to go buy these businesses, but it's a really good time to be doing it because the businesses are there, the demand is there. And this is not something that's like, oh, this was a fad 5 years ago or 10 years ago. I mean, it's happening now and it'll continue to happen for the next, I would tell you, 3, 5, 10 years. So super exciting time to be thinking about things.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity, just like you were talking about. And it's interesting how you went into Anytime Fitness, right? And just opened up a lot of locations for those franchises to start out with that. And it sounds like it worked out pretty well. And so I want to jump into that a little bit. So, what are the main numbers that you're looking at, for instance, when you first jumped into an Anytime Fitness franchise? What were you looking at to decide, like, this is it? This is what I want to jump into? Like, what are you looking at? Is it just EBITDA at the end of the day, or is there anything else that goes into that for you?
Yeah, great question. So first and foremost, I detail with a lot of personal stories how I think about diligencing fitness clubs and everything in that industry in the book. The key though with Anytime Fitness and is that honestly, it's very simple. And the best concepts in life really are this simple. And these opportunities have been gone for, I would tell you, 10 or 15 years now. But Anytime Fitness, the core success is just find a small town of as little as literally as little as 4,000 people with little to no competition. And you can make 10, 15,000 bucks a month at least in EBITDA, in adjusted EBITDA, in cash flow. That was the fundamental sweet spot of the franchise back then, and that's where I found my success. As time has gone on, the company has evolved and done a lot more around coaching. And recently, they just actually merged with Orange Theory Fitness, so they have like a nice fitness behemoth going now. But I would tell you the core of that concept, where I personally found my success, was just finding these fringe markets with no competition. There's a lot of businesses out there that you just don't have to, it doesn't have to be sexy, it doesn't have to be high tech. It's simple. And I love dirty businesses like that. Dirty, off the beaten path businesses are fantastic. That's where I've found most of my success in this space. When I think about innovation, by the way, I love talking about the example of the fork. The fork has been around for thousands of years. And frankly, Will, I don't think the fork's going to get out innovated anytime in the near future, right? I think that a lot of the things that existed in the past are also going to exist into the future as well. So it's very cool, no judgment against playing around with like groundbreaking new trend-setting technologies, but there's also opportunities out there and things that just work in unsexy industries that may not have that much growth. And it can literally be a concept like, hey, I'm going to open up a convenient, clean, non-intimidating fitness club in a town where there isn't one currently, and go from there. So that's been the key.
That's awesome. And so, just so you mentioned, I think a lot of people want to get into something like this. It's kind of hard for them though. Initially, how do you recommend people come up with that upfront cash? I mean, is that something that they're going to a venture capitalist for just to buy current companies? Is that something you got to go to the bank and get a loan, or how did you technically do it? Like, if they don't have all that cash in the bank, what would you recommend for them to do to put themselves in a position to actually go out there and buy a company and start building it?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't, I would tell you one, get a job, save some stuff up, go to friends and family. So first step in this process is assessment, right? I have a nice tool I created in the book. So, read the book, grititdone.com, do the assessment tool. The key is that if you're all into doing this, right, you can make a plan to save the capital that you need. You can go to friends and family. There's always money out there to bridge the gap. If the opportunity is good, you're passionate about it, you're all into it, it makes sense, money will not be a problem. The misconception is that money's the problem. It's not. The problem is not having a compelling enough opportunity. I believe in small business ownership, and for people that read the book, take a course I teach, or create a relationship with me in some other way, like I will happily consider bridging that equity gap for you. But I'm not just going to do it for people that I don't think have a chance of being successful in the endeavor. So don't think about, oh, how am I going to raise money? Put yourself in the person who you want to raise money from, and ask yourself, why would this person invest in me? What are the criteria that I should check? Does this align to my interest? Does this align to my background? Am I willing to go anywhere, do anything, sign a personal guarantee? Show some empathy, put yourself in their shoes, find a compelling opportunity, and then the money problem will solve itself.
Yeah.
Is my guidance for it.
I love that idea, right? It's gonna find a way, right? If the opportunity is good enough, someone out there will help you, supply the money for the opportunity.
Yeah, and let's be clear, equity is not free. If you want me to invest, it's going to be at market terms of the equity upside. This is not a charity essentially,
Right.
but
Right.
yeah, if you're all into it and you get scrappy with it, you'll find the stuff out there. So that's the first step. And also too, I got an MBA. I teach MBAs. I think MBAs are great. I think going to conferences are great. I think taking weekend courses are absolutely fantastic. And the key is just diligence them, find the one that just feels the most right to you, because the relationships that can come out of these courses that you take can be truly life-changing if you let them.
Yeah.
Is that But ultimately, you don't have to spend that money to start with. Okay. And that's a big reason I wrote this book is like, hey, spend 99 cents end of May, grititdone.com, or $8 thereafter when the price gets raised. Read the book, spend 3 hours, understand the frameworks, listen to the personal experiences, see if this is actually a lifestyle that you want to go down. And if it is, great. Consider a course, consider an MBA, consider whatever does make sense for you, or consider just being like, I'm going to do this on my own, though I highly don't recommend that. Searching for a business and running a business can be very lonely. I actually love the picture you have on your podcast. It's a picture of like you with a crown. Someone once told me, actually on a podcast, that their dad owned a business and it's like the weight of the crown is heavy. The weight of being a business owner is heavy, both when you're searching and when you actually acquire. So find the right peer group. Like don't do the process alone unless you really like pain. But ultimately it's your choice.
Yeah.
But the key is, read the book, decide if it's something that you actually want to do, and then, take other steps from there. And that's why the big reason I wrote it is that there was like a low cost, efficient first step in the process.
100%. And especially for 99 cents, I think everyone should be getting that book at this point, right? Because it's just free value, basically,
Yeah. And it's, yeah, exactly. And again, it's not for the person that, the person that wants to buy the $2 million EBITDA business. I mean, there's frameworks in there are the same, but it's really for individuals that are like, hey, I want to do this, but at like a smaller scale, and I want access to the same like lessons, tools, and frameworks
Yep.
that others are getting as well. But the 99 cents is there. But the more important thing, it's the time, right? It's like the 3 hours that someone spends to actually read it, hear the stories, understand the frameworks, and then decide if it makes sense from there. Because ultimately, there's a lot of people you can talk to in the space, but what I found, because I will always talk to anybody who wants to go down this route because people did it for me, over the years. So I want to intrinsically give back. But what I found is that oftentimes people are not always prepared for the call. So this book is a great way to prepare yourself for a call for me or with someone else who's been successful in the space, because that way you'll get more value out of it. They'll get more value out of it. And they're going to be much more likely to want to back you or work with you as things go forward. So.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so I want to jump back into your story here a little bit. So you mentioned you had a job out of college doing finance stuff, and then you obviously transitioned into becoming a franchise owner of Anytime Fitness. And so I'm assuming you exited all your franchises with Anytime Fitness a couple years after that. How did that work?
No, I was held on to the last one till March 2022. Again, absentee
Wow.
ownership, entrepreneurial business owner, like
Yeah.
great situation. I went to business school. And one thing I was talking about the peer groups earlier, I had my fellow franchise owners as a good network when I had the fitness centers. I also knew some other business owners, but I caught what I'll call lonely owner syndrome with that business. And that compelled me to want to go to business school, which was a fantastic experience. And I have no regrets on. What I do wonder though, is if I'd surrounded myself with a different peer group when I owned the fitness centers, I wonder if I wonder how things might have turned out differently, right? I'm not saying they didn't turn out well, they turned out exceptionally well, but a big piece of guidance for, I think, all of your audience here, whether you're thinking about owning a business, whether you do currently own a business, whole 9 yards, whether you're thinking about selling a business, quite frankly, is surround yourself with a good peer group of other business owners that get it, because there's, in my opinion, no substitute for that. And in later endeavors, when I found that both through business school and other organizations that I'm a part of, it has proven to be transformational. The amount of money that I've spent on those groups, I have gotten back. I can't even put a multiple on it. It's been truly invaluable from like an investment standpoint, but just from the relationships I've made out of those groups as well. So
Yeah.
key takeaway, pure groups matter.
Yeah. And I think people constantly hear that, like relationships matter, like relationship capital, you got to build all that stuff up. And a lot of people don't act on it, right? That's one of the main reasons why I want to start a podcast, because you get connected with business owners all over the world, right? And so it's like for anyone out there listening, it's so easy to kind of get involved and meet business owners, right? If that's who you want to start networking with, so you can eventually, meet them and see what they're doing, learn from them at the top ranks. But like I said, there's so many ways out there to really increase your peer group, to be around people that are smarter than you, be more successful to you, and then they're going to pull you up with them, right? Because you're going to learn from them and their strategies and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing to build off on that too is that it's always good to network with people that are, past you in the process. But ultimately, I think that people sometimes forget that it's actually your true peers that are probably going to help you the most in the process because they're in the same boat with you. And a lot of people that, are famous or successful, there's a lot of demands on their time. So it's a challenge to get time with them. And it's just not as easy for them to help you. But your peers, the ones that are in the trenches with you, I have seen some of those relationships for me personally and for others prove to be the most valuable longer term. So my guidance is, don't always think about, oh, I want to I want to call up like Reid and I want to like chat with him and I want all the time with him. That's great. Totally do it. But also do not be blinded to the people that are right next to you. Because I would tell you, in the majority of situations, it's your peers that are actually going to add the value to your life, not the person that's like super successful and has, been down this road a bunch. So look at your peers. And when I teach, I always tell people the same thing. I'm like, hey, listen, it's the people in this room that are really going to drive the value, not me. So focus your attention on them. And that's where you're really going to have things happen to blow up. So
Yeah.
it's one misconception I see out there in the space. And doing podcasts and talking about the book, the podcast hosts that I meet are absolutely fantastic as well. So the networking there is like been pretty fun too.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of people a lot of good people out there. You just got to find them,
Mm.
So yeah, I want to jump back into your story a little bit again. So talk me through when you first exited your first company, what was that like, right? How did that process work? How hard was it to find like venture capitalists, or did you work through like a wealth management person, or how did that process actually function? Like an investment banker, or how'd that work?
Yeah, so I'll talk about the industrial services business essentially. The way that I thought about it was two frameworks, right? One is, and this was a dirty business, right? Doing like very dirty work, like grease trap pumping and things like that. Dirty business keeps America running, super good. So I had an intrinsic motivation to do an ESOP to exit because I wanted to have the team members doing this hard work end up owning it.
Right.
ESOPs are very complex, and I went through a process to get an ESOP approved via SBA 7A lending. The best way I can describe this is it's like climbing Mount Everest, right? And then climbing K2 right thereafter. It was two gargantuan tasks that really showed how complex, American regulations can be on things. But ultimately, I had a roadmap to get an ESOP done, which, would have left me in a good financial situation and would have left the team members with employee ownership. Then I ultimately decided that I couldn't quite get comfortable with some of the burdens from a governance standpoint that the ESOP would have had. So I went out and I engaged three intermediaries, and I got an opinion of value around what the business might be worth. And I knew what the ESOP was going to get me from like a exit standpoint, and I knew what employee ownership, because I did the present value of it, making some assumptions of what that would mean to all the team members there. Then basically, I took that number and I asked strategic in the space to pay a certain price for the business that would leave the team members as well off, but with a cash bonus instead of ownership in the business, and would also leave me as well off as I would have been with the ESOP. Ultimately, they accepted that price. I continued to grow the business very robustly from agreement of the sale price all the way through close, and it was a great exit. I'm happy. Team members got paid the retention bonuses. They were still happy. The acquirer, last time I talked to them, which was pretty recently, is still happy. So it was a good situation. But I coach, or I would not say coach, but I would advise that key to being an entrepreneurial business owner, before you acquire a business or decide to buy a franchise or anything, just know what your exit strategy is. Like, understand what your exit options are before you even get into the endeavor. Private equity firms, people like me, we just don't buy businesses or start businesses without knowing what our exit strategy is or what our exit options are. We just simply don't do it. And we always do our best to run the businesses like run the business so it's always ready for sale, because you don't know whether it be a health issue or something else where circumstances change where you might be forced to sell. I'm doing one of my passion projects in life now. Pretty hard passion project, but I'm doing it. Is I'm a PhD student, so I should be doing my PhD in 2 years.
Wow.
And I'm studying seller post, like successful business owner post sales sentiment. So I'm analyzing what drives unhappy sellers versus happy sellers, to keep it simple. And it's really interesting to understand, what the themes of that are. And we can obviously go into that with a future podcast when that research is fully complete. I got one paper published and got one more that should be done maybe 6 months to a year, probably about a year from now. And it's really interesting to see what some of the themes of happy sellers are versus not happy sellers, because some of the stuff is very surprising. But what I can tell you with 100% certainty is that being prepared to sell the business at all times, which is a lot easier said than done. And I outlined some of the things that I recommend doing in the book and that I have personally done, but having the business always ready for sale is critical. I can't think of a single reason aside from pride, right? And wanting to feel like you matter in the business for an owner. That's the only reason not to run the business like it's always for sale. So
Right.
certainly one key takeaway.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like it was an excellent exit too for your first time. It's amazing how much you're doing. Like you're getting a PhD and everything. And you look super young too. So you sound like
And
crushing
to
it
be
right
clear, that was the last company, not the first one. I can talk about the other ones as well, but that was the last one. I misheard the question there. And
now. You're good.
I mean, I bought and sold businesses with intermediaries, without intermediaries, whole nine yards. What I have generally found, and I also sold a business, by the way, which I outlined in the book, no joke, one of the fitness clubs, I actually sold the business. I had a manager on site that could give tours. I actually sold the business without ever talking to the buyer, except via email, which I thought was pretty cool.
That's
I took
impressive.
I took it as a challenge once we were like a month or two into it. I'm like, you know what? We're just doing all email here, and good exit, like good transition. I mean, it was a great business, so that made it easy. But I've actually sold a business without ever talking to the buyer, and I still haven't talked to the buyer to this day, except via email. So yeah,
Wow.
I've done it in unique ways. But what I can tell you, a critical theme though, is that in selling a business, uses of competent help is a very common theme among high sentiment transactions. So the guidance is that if you can find the right intermediary and you can cultivate that relationship well, and that right intermediary allows a seller to align to their ideal self essentially and take vision-based action, I think that, not always based on my experience, but based on the research, I think that's what the research is starting to show is the best way to do it. So that's fodder for a future podcast. So something to look forward to.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and some of those strategies are outlined in the book, but the key to this is that it's just a good first step to becoming an entrepreneurial business owner, both for people that just don't know about the space and also for people that are in the trenches as a business owner that are thinking, hey, it's like maybe something I want to, think about selling or exiting someday as well. So
Yeah.
super exciting.
Yeah, all great info. And like you said, we could have a whole nother podcast on just what a business is looking for when trying to acquire another company, right? That's a whole nother topic. But I do want to jump into more of what do you currently do now? So are you mainly buying companies now, investing in companies now as a venture capitalist person? Is that what you're primarily doing right now and coaching people on how to get started?
Yeah. So right now I teach as an adjunct professor. So I teach this to MBAs and mid to late career executives that, after a couple years of working have the money to go out and self-fund. So I'm teaching it, wrote the book as well. I will also invest in individuals that want to go out and be business owners. I just do it with my own capital. And then outside of that, yeah, I'm doing the PhD doctoral research as well. So I'm transitioning to the issue is that small businesses account for 43.5% of US GDP. And I recognize that there's definitely some, but there's just not a ton of academic literature out there about what was such a critical part of the economy. So I saw a unique opportunity to be able to fill that. So
Yeah.
those are the four things I'm doing. What I will probably ultimately start doing as well is I'll just teach courses on this stuff as well to people that, if it doesn't make sense to get an MBA and they think that I'm someone who's viable to teach this stuff, then I'll probably start teaching that as well to kind of fill some of the gap there. But I'm staying very busy with the research, the teaching, and the whole nine yards from there. Now, you should know that I'm an operator at my core. So
Yeah.
I try to live vicariously through the students and the people I invest in, and I serve on boards as well for companies that I invest in, which is interesting because so boards are a whole interesting endeavor on themselves, but I do that as well. but yeah, I'm just trying to live vicariously through my teaching and through my investing now. And ultimately, maybe someday I'll get back in the trenches. So I'm trying to, see if I can do something different than that. And after all these years of running a business as well, I've seen how the sausage of our country is made. And it actually really incentivizes me to want to figure out what a way to get involved in public service makes sense as well. But now I'm focused on teaching people how to do it, just taking all the stuff that I've learned, and we'll go from there. So that's what's keeping
Awesome.
me busy these days.
Yeah, I don't blame you. You've already done so many different things and might as well keep trying things. But it's super cool you're a professor as well and teaching it because I think a lot of the professors don't actually have that experience, but you've obviously have sold, exited, built companies, so you obviously know everything, in between those great lines that a lot of people don't have experience with, which is cool.
Yeah, and the crazy part is that it's like all the you kind of like hear all this stuff, and it's all really like the same thing. I'm just a entrepreneurial business ownership enthusiast. That's all that I've really done for the last 16 years. And it's all that I really want to do in the future. It's all like based on that. So whether I'm running companies, buying them, selling them, teaching people how to do it, doing academic research on it, like talking about it, writing books about it, it's all the same thing there. So
Awesome.
it's kind of trying to cover it from every single angle, basically.
Yeah, I love it. Got to keep it interesting, right?
Yeah, 43.5% of the US economy. And by the way,
That's a
I
lot.
talk about this. Yeah, yeah. And that's defined as companies that's less than 500 employees, right? And also, too, Gallup surveys people every single year about what institution Americans have the most faith in, the most confidence in. What institution do you think do Americans have the most confidence in?
Oh man,
I'll give you a hint. We've been talking about it all day long.
the banking industry, I'm assuming.
No, institution. So it's small business owners.
Small businesses.
The latest one that came out was a 65% of Americans have basically reasonable or high levels of confidence in small business. Religion is 32%, Congress is
Wow.
8%. What's sad is that, and Gallup surveys every single summer, the numbers of all confidence are trending downwards, but small
Really?
business has been at the top of that list for, don't quote me on it, but I'd tell you at least a decade. Yeah, small business number one, military typically number two, and Congress typically the lowest. So, I mean, it's like,
I believe it though, because people can forget
yeah,
the small business owners that are out there trying to make it happen. They're not some uber wealthy person, right? It's someone that's a hardworking person that is
well,
trustworthy.
yes, but you can be, if you do it right, you can, and not you can be super wealthy. You can make a lot
Right.
of money in this endeavor, like to be crystal clear. You don't have to go into it with that mentality. And I think it's just the assessment's the real key to it, for sure. But yeah, the reasons they asked people in 2017 why they had confidence, and the reasons were one, the accountability, like you said, and secondly, Americans associate small business with the American dream. So the end takeaway is that you have the potential to have freedom and autonomy, right? Particularly if you know, you can get the freedom and the autonomy. You can make good money doing it. You're going to be the most popular people in America, right?
Yeah.
I would tell you that you're going to make some interesting, good relationships along the way because people are the biggest sources of both pain, but also the biggest sources of pleasure, I think, in the world of small business.
Mm.
And I think it's pretty hard not to become more civic minded. And again, it's not for everybody. It's a ton of work. Failure is real. Cost of failure is very high. So there's just as many good reasons not to do it, but it's a pretty compelling lifestyle. And I think that everybody should at least pretty seriously analyze it and decide if it makes sense to do at some point in their life. So I just get
Yeah.
super passionate about talking about it and teaching it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I think a lot of people don't really believe in the American dream anymore, but it's so very still real. There's so many ways you can go out there and become your own business owner and make a huge financial change for your family legacy. And it's possible, right? And so I think it's
Yeah.
people just can understand that still.
Yeah. And then you got individuals out there like you that are cranking, hustling, working it, hosting podcasts, got
Yeah,
your hands in a lot of cool stuff, making it happen. So, wow, it's good stuff.
exactly. Well, I appreciate that. And before we run out of time here, is there anything else that you'd like to say? And how can people go out there and actually find Grid Done? I know you mentioned it was on your website. Is there any other places or just on your website?
Yeah, easiest thing is go to grititdone.com, click on the link, buy it for 99 cents through the end of May. Then it's going up to $8 thereafter, I think. And then you can engage with me on LinkedIn and X on Twitter as well. I always had my head in the sand when I was running businesses, but now I'm starting to have a little bit of fun with social media. So
Yeah,
certainly feel free to engage with me as there. It's so crazy how like the world has changed so much of that stuff. So I'm like
yeah.
a kid in a candy shop playing around with that stuff there.
A
So
lot of stuff going on, especially now with AI too. So it just keeps on changing. There's
oh
just
yeah,
there's something
yeah.
to
What's
learn.
going on like a year ago is like different now, and 6 months. It's like that with the publishing industry too. But that's a whole conversation for a different day. I'm sure as you
Yeah,
well know.
yeah. And real quick, if you give me like a bullet point list, like what are the main things or main takeaways you hope people can get after reading your book, Get It Done?
If you're not all in, you're in the way. If you're halfway in, you're halfway out. It's critical that when you're going down the route of trying to acquire a business, that there's a lot of people looking to do it. So just make sure that you are fully into this process. Save yourself the time of not being all in. So good life mentality too. If you're not all in, you're in the way. That's the biggest takeaway I put out there.
Yeah, awesome. I love that. All right, guys, there you have it. Reid Tileston, thank you so much for joining me today. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Willpower Podcast. If that's the case, help us spread the message of positivity and simply wanting a better life by giving us a 5-star review. Until next time, have a great week.